I wanted to wait until the WWE draft has concluded to really form a realistic opinion here on the World Heavyweight Championship scene. For those who don't know, WWE revealed a new World Heavyweight Championship. If you guys don't watch my main channel, perhaps you could go check out that video. The belt looks incredible. But now that the WWE draft has concluded, I was looking at it a little bit more specifically from a different standpoint, because a lot of people on my Twitter feed are saying SmackDown is absolutely stacked. And while I do agree that SmackDown might have the bigger names, I feel like SmackDown will actually have a really significant mid-card. However, Roman Reigns holding the championship belt with what I believe he'll continue to hold that belt. I don't think that belt is coming off anytime soon, right? So I'm looking at SmackDown. I see Roman Reigns is holding the belt. We saw that they drafted Edge and Bobby Lashley. They have some credible names, but then I look at that potential mid-card, and I look at guys like LA Knight and Karrion Kross. I look at Grayson Waller. I look at some of these people that have been drafted to SmackDown, and I think their mid-card will be a really nice mid-card. In fact, I think SmackDown's selling point will in fact be their mid-card. Obviously, they have the Bloodline storyline going on, and that is good, but I think a lot of guys on SmackDown will actually be able to shine because the U.S. title is now on SmackDown. And I think the mid-card will be pretty significant on Raw. Obviously, Gunther holding the IC title. You're going to have Chad Gable. You're going to have quite a few NXT talent on the show. Obviously, Bronson Reed. There's quite a few people on Raw where I think the mid-card could be solid. Johnny Gargano's there. Dexter Lumis is there. But I think the real selling point for Raw is having a very significant and strong World Heavyweight Championship title picture. Which is interesting, because the conversation now is about Cody Rhodes and whether or not he goes for the consolation prize. Now, for those who think that way, just understand, I see where you're coming from. So far, Cody Rhodes has not given us an indication that's the belt that he wants. I've already fantasy booked, which, by the way, just fantasy booking this, it's pretty significant. But I think Cody Rhodes could eventually go on to win the Rumble and then go on to compete and go on to win the Rumble at number 1 or very early in the Rumble and then defeat Roman Reigns at WrestleMania next year, which at that point in time, I would assume if WWE went that route, Cody Rhodes would not, he would basically replace Roman Reigns on SmackDown, right? So Cody has not given us an indication that he's going for the World Heavyweight Championship. We know that he's going against Brock Lesnar at Backlash. In my opinion, I don't think Cody Rhodes should win the World Heavyweight Championship belt. I think WWE needs to have another top name in the company win the World Heavyweight Championship belt and add some legitimacy to the title as it is now back in the company. So when I look at WWE Raw, I think they have a pretty solid mid-card. I think it's up to WWE to really book that mid-card and make it strong. But I'm looking at potential World Heavyweight Champion holders, right? And I look at guys like Finn Balor, who finally have an opportunity to become the World Heavyweight Champion. I look at guys like Seth Rollins, who definitely have that opportunity. I look at Damian Priest as another name who could potentially be a World Heavyweight Champion. And some people might say it's too early, it's too soon. But realistically, I'm not saying you have to rush with any of these people. But ultimately, if you're the WWE and you want to bring credibility to the World Heavyweight Championship, you should give it to the guy who actually has beaten Roman Reigns in the last 2 years, which is Seth Rollins. And I like the fact that WWE actually kind of brought this up on Raw between Seth Rollins and Paul Heyman and planting the seed there, because at the end of the day, when I look at WWE Raw, and I look at Cody, and I look at Shinsuke Nakamura, and I look at all of these other people that could potentially hold the belt, Finn Balor, right? I look at those names and I say, those are going to be very credible and very good opponents for Seth Rollins. SmackDown might have the bigger names. SmackDown could potentially have the more entertainment value. But in my mind, I look at WWE Raw as the show that is going to be the workhorse show. If you have Seth Rollins win the World Heavyweight Championship, I would fully commit to Seth Rollins as a babyface. He is completely over. I feel like he is a babyface at this point. I'm okay with this. I think if you're the WWE, what you really need to do is then start building up these opponents for someone to eventually take the belt off Seth Rollins, because I do not want to see Seth Rollins hold this belt for 365 days. And it's not because I don't like Seth Rollins or anything like that. I'm looking at this from the perspective of keeping this title fresh and keeping the opponents fresh. So I look at Raw, and I look at Finn Balor, and I look at Shinsuke Nakamura. Those two specific names are guys that I would love to see compete for the World Championship. I like Gunther. I think Gunther is a future world champion. He is doing incredible work with the Intercontinental Champion. If you want to commit to Gunther's growth in the WWE and establishing him as that number one heel on Raw, I think you can do a great job with that. I also want to point out Drew McIntyre. I don't want to speculate on Drew McIntyre's future because he's currently going through an injury. There's talks of his contract ending at the end of the year. But Drew McIntyre could also be a top heel on Raw. So the idea of Seth Rollins building out really big storylines with guys of this magnitude is really good. And when Seth Rollins wins the title, he can eventually drop it to Gunther, right? He could eventually drop it to Finn Balor. He could eventually drop it to Damian Priest. But as long as WWE is committed to building up these guys in the meantime, I think it all works out. But there's not a scenario at all where I believe Cody Rhodes should be winning the World Heavyweight Championship immediately. Now, I think the best thing you could do if you really want Cody to finish the story with Roman, you got to keep them separate for a while. Cody has to go through his adversity. I know this sounds crazy, but I actually wouldn't even have Cody Rhodes beat Brock Lesnar. I wouldn't. I would have Cody go through a year of a downfall, right? I would love to see Cody go into the finals for the World Heavyweight Championship belt only to lose to Seth Rollins. After all, he does have Seth Rollins' number after, 3 or 4 matches now? So, in my opinion, if I'm the WWE, I actually want to establish Cody Rhodes on the comeback story, right? This is the hard times stuff. You have Cody go through that, eventually wins the Rumble, goes on to challenge Roman Reigns. At that point, I think Roman Reigns is done, and which is fine because Cody could then move on to SmackDown as Undisputed Champion and then on WWE Raw because it's already been a year. At this point, you've already established top feuds for the World Heavyweight Championship. My point that I'm making is that WWE doesn't need Cody to win the World Heavyweight Championship for it to be a good title. I also want to point out there's guys like Chad Gable, where I'm not saying Chad Gable should be the world champion right away, but if the IC title, which has been built with all of this great positive notoriety, right? It's just been built up. You can have Chad Gable versus Gunther at SummerSlam for the IC title. You can have Chad Gable get a very serious push this summer as a singles guy away from Otis, and then have Chad Gable take the belt from Gunther. That moves Gunther up. And then when WWE is ready for another top babyface to hold the championship, by next year, you can actually have Chad Gable as the guy to eventually become a world champion. Now, for some of you who don't believe that is a possibility, my point that I'm trying to make is that if you're properly building up guys, if you're constantly giving them the big wins that they need, if you're constantly putting them in good stories, good babyface turns, good heel turns, if you're getting people invested in these characters now instead of waiting, then you will have a crop of talent who are ready at any point in time to become world heavyweight champion. And I will throw this out there. Bronson Reed is a hell of a talent. I think he needs to be involved in the mid-card a little bit longer, get more established. There's quite a few talent out there that I think could benefit from that. But I also think if WWE was smart, and this is where things could be really good, if WWE starts establishing their mid-card now, right, after this draft, some of these new faces, some of these people that are getting pushed, some of these NXT call-ups, if you start establishing them now, WWE will be in a situation a year or two from now where they're not going to have to desperately choose somebody at random, but they can have an orchestrated plan for somebody to become the guy. I'm very much a fan of Seth Rollins winning the World Heavyweight Championship. I don't think there is anybody better right now. But yes, Shinsuke should get a crack at it. Finn Balor should absolutely get a crack at it. So many guys should get a crack at it. And if I'm the WWE, I would actually have WWE's World Heavyweight Championship belt change hands on Raw on a random episode. Down the line, several months from now, that's what I would do if I was WWE. If it's Seth Rollins who's the first champion, I would have him randomly lose it on Raw. I would use this title belt to create compelling television, and I just think that would be the thing that makes the most sense. Ultimately, I'm excited, man. I am excited. I'm not saying WWE is perfect. I'm not saying AEW is perfect. But right now, as it stands, I've been very happy with watching wrestling. I feel like WWE, Raw, SmackDown, NXT, Dynamite, everything's been pretty damn solid. Plus, Impact Wrestling has been killing it. So just in general, I feel very good about the situation that we're going into. It's all about optimism, but being realistic. And the biggest issue I can see WWE having is not establishing guys to become the second, third, or fourth World Heavyweight Champion. Seth Rollins becoming the first champion makes a lot of sense, but it's up to WWE to start creating moments and stories that build up this mid-card. Gunther is ready. Damian Priest is ready. Shinsuke Nakamura could be ready. Chad Gable could be ready. There's a plethora of talent who could be ready, but it's really important post-WWE draft for them to establish them early. This way, 9, 10, 11 months from now, WWE is not desperately trying to find a replacement to then win the World Heavyweight Championship. So my pick, Seth Rollins. But it's up to WWE to convince us of who could potentially become the champion after that. And that begins now. You don't wait, you do it now. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. I appreciate you all for watching this video here on More Ango, and I'll see you next time.